is it?
You're locked into the Flagship, an Ole Miss podcast powered by College Corner.
Here we go.
1, 2, 3.
Get your daily Rebel sports fix at the Ole Miss Spirit, omspirit.com.
Welcome into this Tuesday edition of the Flagship. I'm your host, Zach Berry. A podcast that is brought to you each and every day by our good friends at College Corner. 3 locations, Oxford, Ridgeland, Flowood. And if you need to go online, they have you covered there. collegecornerstore.com. We are also brought to you by our good buddy Drew Moak at USA Benefits Group. Cut those health insurance premiums 20 to 30% with Drew Moak and USA Benefits Group. You can get your free quote today by calling him 601-953-8449 or check him out at usabg.com/DMOAK. All right, on this episode, we're going to talk about last week's visitors, who was in town. I talked to a couple, see what the thoughts were, kind of the overarching theme of this show. We'll get into that momentarily. But look, another big group, and I think one thing for Ole Miss fans to kind of relish and really notice here is it's another big group for a non-conference game. And look, it wasn't FCS, Conference USA, but I think that's pretty indicative of this program right now and what this staff has built and just the overall buzz around this program is, I think a lot of kids are just saying, hey, I don't care. I'm going to go watch Ole Miss play because they're a top 5 team. That's kind of been the norm for a lot of the blue blood programs like Alabama and Ohio State and, those types of programs, Oregon, SC, Texas. You see large groups up in Columbus all the time when the Buckeyes are playing Akron. You see big groups of kids going out to LA when SC's playing San Jose State, that kind of game. It doesn't matter. They want to go, they want to experience game day, they want to see what the crowd's like, they want to see what the atmosphere is like, and they want to see a team play that is a top 5 team. So it's kind of rarefied air for Ole Miss right now. It hasn't been like this in a very long time. And I think Ole Miss fans should relish it, should appreciate it, because this is it doesn't happen like this very often. But looking at the list, the heavy hitters, a lot of commits were in town, but a couple names that I want to get into that made it in town that are pretty important. First and foremost, we got to talk about Mario Nash. Very interesting prospect. I've talked with several people about Mario, and I've seen him live. I've talked to scouts when I saw him. I saw him at the Under Armour Next camp that was in Georgia in February. Won the O-line MVP there. Was really impressive. It was a really good group of defensive linemen there. He handled himself well. Everybody I seem to talk to kind of said, hey, we want to see him we want to see him grow into the frame, get bigger physically. Like he's already 6'4", 6'5", 260, 270. I don't have an exact, verified weight on him. But a lot of people say, hey, we like the tools. He's big. You can add something to the frame. A lot of people are just wanting to see more. Not ideal arm size for an offensive tackle. A lot of people said, maybe he can slide inside and be a guard. And, I think when people say that, it's not a knock. It's not, he's not good enough to play tackle. It's just a better fit. Talking with several coaches and recruiting staffers when I was at the symposium this summer, we were talking a lot about evaluating and how different schools evaluate differently. Whether it was, talking with guys from West Virginia or, guys from, Alabama or Georgia or South Carolina or Oregon or Ohio State. It doesn't matter what tier in college football you are. Everybody has their own evaluation process. And it was kind of the consensus across the board. A lot of people said, hey, we need we need to see big arms from offensive linemen first and foremost. Like you can make an exception here and there when a guy's got elite athleticism, good feet, kind of a natural feel for the position. But the arm size is a big stickler, and I know people have said that they've seen Mario and they've measured not ideal arm size for an offensive tackle. And a lot of people said, hey, we've seen the tape. We think he could slide inside. I don't know if that's the case with Ole Miss. It could be. I don't know. Mario hasn't really told me he has a preference. I don't think he does. I think he just wants to go somewhere and play. Pretty soft spoken, laid back dude. Whenever I've talked with him, I think he just wants to go play ball somewhere. But whatever the case may be, things have shifted a little bit. Earlier this summer, he commits to Mississippi State. He was pretty much all in. He didn't cut off communication with everyone, but he was pretty adamant that he was solid with his commitment. And now all of a sudden shows up at Ole Miss, having a good time on Saturday, hung out with Kelvin Bolden, John Garrison, kind of got the whole, I wouldn't say the full official visit experience. And by full, I mean like a full 2.5 day, 3 day, a normal OV that guys would take, late November, December when they don't have a game on Friday. So still got to be there all day Saturday, saw the game and hung out afterwards. I think that was big for him to see the game. And look, second week in a row, I'm not going to say that Kiffin's doing this on purpose, but first week, Furman, you've got Caleb Cunningham in the building. Jackson Dart's throwing it all over the place. The wide receivers go crazy. This game, it was a more concerted effort for Ole Miss to run the football and establish the run in the beginning of the game. Again, I don't think that has anything to do with the recruits. I mean, we've said it for years now. Kiffin prefers to run the football and to dictate pace and tempo with the run game, and that's kind of the whole point of the scheme that Ole Miss runs. But yeah, it certainly doesn't hurt that you had Henry Parrish go for a career day, run for 4 touchdowns. The offensive line was really cooking. So yeah, when a 4-star offensive lineman prospect is in the building and he sees that, certainly stands out. He said that to me when I talked to him on Sunday. He said the offensive line looked really good, and the door has not been closed at all with Ole Miss. Right now, it seems Mississippi State's biggest competition is Ole Miss. Mario confirmed with me that Ole Miss is number 2 right now. Still committed, but he said Ole Miss is number 2. He's going to go check out Florida State. Clemson's coming after him. Matt Luke's the offensive line coach at Clemson. He said he hasn't heard much from them lately. He says he will go take his OV to Florida State when they play Clemson, which if I effort really quick, that game is October 5th. So he will be there for that. But yeah, I think it's again, it's not, a shoe-in that he's going to flip or anything, but I think it's kind of a proof of concept here with someone like Mario Nash that has been adamant about how he's committed, and he still shows up because he wants to see Ole Miss play. I think that's big. I think that's a true indicator of what this program is now. Same with Caleb Cunningham. I mean, I talked to some people this week. He's adamant about, Tuscaloosa's home. He's going to go to Alabama, all of that, but he still shows up to Ole Miss. He still wants to see. Now, sure, kids like to go to games. It's not breaking news. A lot of dudes want to go watch a football game, but a lot of them don't. We talked about that on the show before. A lot of kids aren't really into watching college football. They might watch NFL, but for the most part, they're just being teenagers. They're sitting around playing video games or hanging out with their friends. They're not really dialed in like we are with college football. So I don't know, kind of the theme I wanted to get into today was, do wins and losses mean a little bit more now with college football playoff being expanded? The field's much larger. For years it was always no, and that's through years of research, talking to not only the recruits, but talking to coaches, and, coaches always saying, that didn't really come up much when we're talking, but, it certainly, you see all the blue bloods and the really good college football programs, the ones that win a lot typically get a lot of good recruits. So it does mean something to a certain extent. I don't think it's necessarily going to, for most recruits, it's not going to, really dictate where they might go, but maybe it does now. Maybe it does when you've got a Mississippi prospect. For years, the two in-state schools, had their ups and downs, but never really in the limelight, in the forefront of college football. And Ole Miss is that right now. Ole Miss is in the forefront. Ole Miss is top 5. Ole Miss has earned that spot. I think a lot of people are still doing the, hey, we still got to see it. We Ole Miss hasn't played anybody, but Ole Miss is still top 5. So the respect is there. But I still think people are waiting for that other shoe to drop with Ole Miss and with Lane Kiffin, which is unfairly, knocked with him, is, he doesn't win the big game. Last year people were saying that same thing. He didn't win the big game. Well, okay, he lost to Alabama and the greatest coach in college football history on the road, and then he lost to Georgia, probably the premier program in college football right now, on the road. So yeah, big games, sure. But it's like, to just absolutely knock a dude that won the other 11 and to just say, well, you can't win the big one. Well, the Penn State one was pretty big. Peach Bowl was pretty big. So I think that these wins and losses are starting to mean some things. We had some big upsets over the weekend. Notre Dame gets beat by Northern Illinois. Auburn gets beat by Cal like a drum. I think those start to stack up and mean something a little bit, especially the way the teams looked in the loss. Arkansas a little different, had a big lead, blew it, got to double overtime. Bob Petrino still got the offense going. They put up 600 yards, still lose, which is wild. That's a different way to lose. Auburn, just got drilled by Cal. Never a doubt. Notre Dame, had a field goal at the end. It was 62-yarder. But yeah, losing at home, both of those teams losing at home when they're huge favorites. I think, it's not going to completely shift a recruit's mindset or their opinion, but it certainly means something. I think that would be disingenuous to say otherwise. I think that, those recruits are definitely going to at least kind of cock their head to the side, maybe raise a couple eyebrows, and whoa, like I didn't see that coming. Ole Miss is arguably the biggest target on the board left is Deuce Knight, and those two schools I just mentioned are involved with Deuce Knight. Notre Dame loses at home after a huge win on the road at Texas A&M. I don't think people were crowning Notre Dame, but I think a lot of people were impressed by Notre Dame and how well they handled the environment at Kyle Field and kind of went in and dominated that game. I don't think many people expected Northern Illinois to beat them. So that, then you've got Auburn. Just looks bad offensively, just not great. And, you talk about Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois. Only managed to put up 14 points. Not a great showing when you're trying to hold on to a blue chip quarterback. Now, you can look at it on two different ways. You can look at it where the quarterback is, hey, man, that kind of stunk. Like that was not good. Or, which probably the case for most, well, hey, I could go in there and fix that. I could go there and make that offense better. Same with Auburn. Auburn loses to Cal, and what I said was pretty dominant performance by Cal, start to finish. 21-14, only a 7-point win. Kind of felt like a game where it was like 31-14. Auburn could not get anything going offensively. Cal pretty much dominated after Auburn jumped out 7-0. And hey, what does that do for a quarterback like Deuce Knight that many people have been saying for the better part of a month and a half, he's going to flip to Auburn? Still hasn't done it. That's not to say he's not going to. There's NIL is a thing. It's involved here. That could be something that could flip the tables here for Notre Dame and for Auburn. But it certainly doesn't hurt when those two teams lose and look bad offensively. And then you've got Jackson Dart breaking the SEC record for consecutive completions and breaking the national record for consecutive completions with 30 over, 2 different games. It doesn't hurt when you're trying to get a quarterback to look at you when they're committed somewhere else and looking to flip somewhere else. Hey, look at our guy. He's over here starting the game out 24 for 24. So, I think with the expanded playoff, it might mean a little more to see more wins and to see that early development, that early success at the position that you're going to play. Jackson Dart leading the country in passing yards 2 weeks through the season, regardless of who Ole Miss has played. I mean, that's not going to hurt you when you're trying to get a guy like Deuce Knight. So I think that's certainly something to keep an eye on for sure. I think that would be crazy to say that you wouldn't be paying attention. Flipping over to the 2026 class, another big-time target that was in town for the second week in a row, Jera McCoy, the defensive lineman out of Tupelo, number 77 overall prospect in the 26 class, number 5 defensive lineman. He was back in town and continues to talk about the Ole Miss defense. He raves about them. And when I talked to him on Sunday, he told me, he said Ole Miss was most definitely his leader. And it's pretty wild after, releasing a top 13, Ole Miss wasn't included. I know there's been some top 6 drama with, he released a top 6 at one point that didn't include Ole Miss. It didn't include, I think at one point he didn't have Mississippi State in there and then he did. So it's pretty wild at kind of what his recruitment has become pretty quickly with, LSU, SC, Oregon, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Ole Miss being kind of in the mix there. He's been out to California plenty. He went out to a Cal Power camp. So he's familiar with LA. He likes SC. LSU always recruits Mississippi well, especially on the defensive line. Oregon, Tennessee, 2 programs that are right there with Ole Miss in terms of having a really, really, really well-organized NIL collective, and those packages that have been put together by those collectives have been competitive and kept them in the mix with everybody. Oregon's recruiting at an extremely high level. Tennessee the same way. So Jera McCoy coming in second consecutive week, I think is a big, big, big deal. There's a 26 guy, so there's lots of time left. But look, he's very, very, very high on Randall Joyner. He talks about him and how the conversations they have, talking about staying in Mississippi, but also playing for a team like Ole Miss that is in the upper tier, the upper echelon of the SEC now. It's no longer the case where, hey, the selling point is, hey, stay home and rep your state. It's not that anymore. Now it's that, but it's also, hey, come compete for a national championship. Come compete for an SEC championship. And I think that's starting to resonate more on the recruiting trail with guys like Mario Nash and then guys like Jera McCoy. So it continues to, I think, only improve Ole Miss's standing. I've talked a lot about these players that Ole Miss are kind of going after in this 25 class. A lot of their top targets are flip targets. And I think that's something that, can be risky, but also I think Ole Miss has been really good about knowing who they want to go get and staying on task and being able to allocate resources all together for a certain amount of prospects, 5, 6, 7 guys that they're, hey, this is who we're focusing on. And this is where we're going to dedicate all of our time and energy. And then if we, hey, smoke clears, we only get 2 of them, we only get 3 of them, no big deal. We'll hit the portal. So I think that's been big. One last thing, I think we have to talk about it because it's a recruiting show, and look, we're going to talk about one of the top targets. We talked about Deuce Knight being the top one, probably 1A, 1B with him. It's Caleb Cunningham. He was back in Alabama over the weekend. Look, they didn't lose, but Alabama kind of stubbed their toe a couple times against USF. The Bulls came out and kind of punched Alabama in the mouth a little bit. Alabama had some bad turnovers, didn't look very good in the red zone. A little bit later in the game, Jalen Milroy and company got it rolling, and the rest is history. Ole Miss wins 42-16. But yeah, I mean, Cunningham is going to continue to say everything that you want to hear if you're an Alabama fan. Chad Simmons of On 3 talked with him after the weekend. He said, hey, quote, I committed to Alabama because of the coaching staff, the quarterback they're bringing in, and the players that he'll get to play with. Yeah, I mean, I think that's huge. If you're Alabama, like, you got your quarterback, you got this class around the quarterback that's certainly enticing for someone like Caleb Cunningham, and that's why he committed. But he's still saying that he will take an official visit to Ole Miss. He said he will take an official visit to Mississippi State. Auburn's still hanging around. But yeah, I mean, look, we have to report on it. We have to talk about it. He told Chad Simmons, I can't say it is completely over because I'm going to keep relationships with different coaches. But he did say, I know where home is right now, yada, 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 all the basic stuff you want to hear if you're an Alabama fan. So he said his commitment's strong, but again, he's not going to close that door, and he's going to take more visits. Yeah, I think that for Ole Miss, I don't really know if getting a quarterback in this class is that important because you have Austin Simmons waiting in the wings. But again, with that, very specific group of prospects that Ole Miss is trying to get in this 25 class to close this out, being able to dedicate all that time and effort. Cunningham said it. He said, the Ole Miss coaches don't stop. They're going to keep recruiting me, all of them. So, he said that, he was impressed with all the points, and they had a good game in the opener when he was in town. Then he'll be back for an OV. He talked about the student section chanting, "We want Caleb." He said that was a pretty cool feeling. So he's going to keep looking. He said as much in July when I talked with him at Juice Fest, and he's continuing to say it. So if you're an Ole Miss fan, that's all you can ask for right now, right? I mean, he's committed to Alabama, but still keeping that door open, still saying he's going to take an official visit. That's all you can really hope for. So I think that's big for Ole Miss to certainly have a 5-star like Caleb Cunningham still saying, hey, I'm still going to come check it out. So, the wins and losses aren't going to really matter much there. I think Alabama's going to win a lot of games this year, and I think Ole Miss is going to win a lot of games. But, yeah, I think that you're starting to see more of an uptick with now that the season's here, games are starting to be played. We talked about that a lot in the offseason, where there's going to be some recruitments that probably shift a little bit when games start being played. Auburn's been one of the better recruiting teams in this class. They're not looking very good right now. It's one game. We'll see what happens, but the rest of the schedule is not going to do them any favors. It's going to get tough. And when you have some mediocre to bad quarterback play and, probably your most explosive player on offense is a true freshman, you're relying on some young guys, can pose some problems. So I think Ole Miss is in a great spot there where, hey, it's a loaded offense. It's a loaded defense, a lot of experience, and it's a lot of dudes that have been there before. So I think Ole Miss is going to be in a great spot come October, come November. Regardless of what the win-loss record is, I think that Ole Miss is proof of concept and being able to point to, hey, this is who, you need to watch in this game because this is what you're going to be doing. I think that's big for Ole Miss. And yeah, I mean, I would argue that I think that the wins and losses are starting to mean more now. I think that that's something that you could say, and maybe it's the 12-team playoff. Maybe, it's It's just kids starting to pay more attention to the product on the field rather than the NIL or the relationships with the coaches, which, still matter. But I do think that there is a way for the wins and losses to start to weigh a little bit more with recruits. And I think that you're certainly going to see that more and more as some of these prospects and their recruitments are starting to get down to the end, starting to get close to the finish line and the nitty gritty and all that. We're like, hey, Ole Miss is 9-0 right now, 10-1. They're in a good spot to get into the college football playoff. They're going to be playing games into December and January. You might want to give them an extra look. Might want to go take an official visit. That's another big thing that I don't think people are talking about. Ole Miss is saving these official visits for later in the year. What kind of official visit is it going to be when, hey, we want you to come in for December for an OV, and we're going to be hosting Notre Dame for a college football playoff game? I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's a very different look for an official visit. Whereas, December, after the last game of the season, whether it's after the SEC championship, in between bowl game, prep and the holidays, little sleepy town, come in, hang out for 2-3 days and then go home. Now you could have, a number, 6-7 Ole Miss playing a number 9 or 10 seed and, packed house, packed town. It's a very different outlook for an official visit. So I certainly think that, that's going to be a new thing to keep an eye on for when these guys are scheduling these official visits and when they'll be. Do want to remind you before we head out here, podcast also brought to you by our good friends at rowback.com. Check them out. They've got some new state-themed shirts. They got some they still don't have the official licensed Ole Miss polos yet. They're working on it, but they've got some Mississippi-esque shirts that are pretty cool. They've also got, several other. I've got this classic, black stripe here with the white. It plays well. Collar, as you can see during the show, did not move, sat right there. Comfortable fit, looked great. You can tuck it in, you can leave it untucked. So you can be a little business casual. You can be real casual with it. When you go to rowback.com, make sure to use promo code JUICE for 20% off. Podcast is also brought to you by our good friends at Home Field Apparel. The VIP boxes, they're working to get them back. They sold out quickly, but make sure to get in line, get your Ole Miss VIP box. You can get those 88, 97 designs that are really cool. Or if you just want to go and get, some merch, just do that. And when you do, use promo code LASTDANCE24 and you get 15% off your first purchase. So that's going to do it for this Tuesday edition of the Flagship. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Appreciate all you folks subscribing, watching on YouTube as well. The channel is growing, so we do greatly appreciate that. Shout out to all the other sponsors that bring this show to you each and every day. And until later this week, I'm Zach Berry. This has been the Flagship. Make sure to lock in omspirit.com. We've got tons of recruiting coverage, tons of coverage leading up to this weekend's game at Wake Forest, as Ole Miss will look to move to 3-0 as they head to the Dash and take on the Deacs. So appreciate everybody tuning in. Until next time.